Hello and welcome to Art on the Farm with me, Sage and Jan. Today we are going to be exploring watercolor crayons. Now, watercolor crayons are a very specific type of crayon, and this particular brand looks like this, but it's going to look very similar to a regular crayon. You may notice a little bit of a texture difference on the inside on the tips of the crayon. Oftentimes, a watercolor crayon set that is an introductory set is going to have a small brush that comes with it. Now, this brush would be a hair brush, round tip hair brush. And hair brushes are pretty typical when working with watercolor. What I tend to find, though, is with the cheap hair brushes, a lot of times you will find that the hair will come out of the ends as you're working with it, and it can get very frustrating. Or I don't have enough control of the hair in the brush. So personally, I will oftentimes, for my watercolor, get a medium quality acrylic brush that has the synthetic bristles, and then I will use that brush. This has just been rinsed is why it looks like that, but I will use that brush to allow me a little bit more control of the area that I'm trying to cover. So if you are buying a set because you're wanting to explore watercolor crayons, then this will be fine for what you need. But if you're wanting to get more serious about it and you're wanting to have a little bit more control, I strongly suggest going on and getting yourself a whole set of brushes, and all you do with that set is watercolor. It can be different types of watercolor, but the brushes will last so much better if that is your watercolor brush set. So just keep that in mind, and just remember that as you get a feel for whether or not this is even a medium that you enjoy or you desire. So we're going to just explore, and we're going to be doing a flower today. I'm going to grab the brown watercolor crayon, and this is going to go on and is going to work just like a regular crayon. So I'm going to go through here, and I'm going to put the center of my flower just as a circle. Notice the motion is so important. And like I said, you're going to notice some similarities and some differences between just a regular old crayon. I'm going to get, that was my brown, I'm going to get myself the black. And a little bit of black with watercolor and other colors is going to go a very long way. So I'm just going to add an ever so slight shadowing down here on the lower part. And I'm going to leave it alone. I'm not going to get too torn up about adding very much black. Here, I'll lift and show you. A little bit of black is going to go a long way on your picture. Okay. All right. Now you need to decide what color you might want to make your flower. I think that for myself, I'm going to start with a nice yellow base, and I'm going to make very long petals that come out like very long extended raindrops and come to a tip right there. It's going to be very hard for you to see because it is yellow that I chose. So I'm going to pull it in. Very long extended petals. And I'm going to do that all across my picture. Now, one thing that you can do, I'm going to add the next layer. And the next layer is going to be, it's called rose pink. I think that's going to allow you to really see that a lot better. And the rose pink, I am not going to completely fill in. All right, now we're going to take that, and what you do to one side, you're going to do to the other. We're going to create that on the other side. I'm going to come out on the top. And then I'm going to come out on the bottom. Ooh, that was a long one. I got a little excited on that one. So I'm going to try to kind of help to work that as I fill in. So once you've filled in on either side, on top and bottom, now you have a clear plan as to where you can fill in your next petals. So I'm going to go on and put this around here just so that you can see. Notice I'm not tracing the whole thing. I'm creating a pretty clear boundary and I'm filling in. Okay. And that fill-in is very rough. What matters the most is that the motions are the same. Okay. Everything is going in the same direction. But the fill-in is very rough. That's going to be smoothed out once we add our water to turn this from a crayon drawing to a watercolor drawing. Okay. So I'm going to fill in here. You're just going in and filling in between all of your spaces. Okay. And once you have done that, I think I'm going to add a little bit of variation. I'm going to put red in this section. Ooh, shake it up a little bit. So I'm maintaining the consistent color of the yellow, but the accent color in the middle is different. That will be neat to see. All right, now with my next layer, this next layer is probably going to end up being my last layer for today, for me. If ever you need to pause, feel free to do so. Now I need to decide what I'm going to use for my other accent color. Let's see. I've used rose pink and red on my side. I'm going to go with vermilion this time. Vermilion is kind of a cross between a red and an orange, really. Ooh, I got a little sloppy there. Always make sure that you're careful. I would rather you take your time and pause the video than get sloppy like what I just did. So that's very hard to undo. The watercolor will be very forgiving, but if you make a mark that goes way out like that, that's going to be very hard to get rid of. Now, one of the beautiful things about the control of doing a watercolor crayon over watercolor itself just with the brush is that you do have control for these nice fine details. So I'm going to use that to my advantage, and I'm going to grab the purple, the violet. The reason that I'm choosing violet is, let's see here, I know that when any of these colors go to mix with a little bit of shading with the violet down in here, that they will mix okay without mucking up the color to make it look bad. So you'll always want to be very color aware. I don't want the whole thing in violet, but I want the colors to kind of pull down in there. Okay. Now, finally, I'm going to go on and do my stem. I'm going to choose 2 different greens for my stem, a lighter and a darker. I'm going to start with the lighter, and I'm going to draw the eye across the page by having my stem go all the way off the end, off the tip. Notice that irregular line going right off the side there. All right. Now I'm going to come through here and to make something different, I'm going to think a more developed raindrop, almost hearty, almost like a heart. Remember, the motion of your crayon is so important even now. I'm not super worried about completely filling that in. I know when I add the water of the watercolor, ooh, it's going to cover a multitude of sins here. So just adding an accent there. But remember to not get too excited with it. That right there just completely changed the shape of my leaf because I got excited. So you make sure that you're careful. Try to make that kind of gradually disappear into the top. Again, I chose to do these really nice rough strokes there. Okay. Now we're going to choose a brush that we feel quite comfortable with. And I'm going to make sure that my brush is not too damp. I'm going to pull on the outside. Wow. From the outside, and I'm going to go work my way into the flower. All right. And then I'm going to choose not to clean off my brush in between. Notice I'm not doing many strokes. I'm not doing many strokes at all to do this. Okay. So I'm just kind of working my brush up the boundary. Working up the boundary of the other side. Try to be careful with your strokes because it can be hard. If something twirls out of there like that just did, try to make it look like it's on purpose. There we go. And again, this is watercolor and my easel is sideways. That should tell you that I do not have a ton of water on my brush. Keep that in mind. You do not need a ton of water. Notice that watercolor is not going anywhere. It's not dripping down my page. And look at how it's changing the look of my picture. You see that? So as I work right here, how it completely changes. And if something happens and it twirls right out, make it on purpose. Make it a part of your picture. Those two got really close together. It's okay. Okay. Moving forward. Oh, what fun this can bring you. Look at this. How wonderful. A lot of times when my older artists see that it's a watercolor crayon, they say to themselves, crayon? I'm way too old for a crayon. I completely disagree. I am not too old for a crayon. Okay. I love the color layering that watercolor crayons allow you. Watercolor pencils are another medium that allows some beautiful, beautiful colored layering. These nice, long, deep strokes. No reason to work harder than you have to. Being able to use your brush without having to re-water it. It's allowing for all of those beautiful colors to shine through. This was my first one and it didn't have the benefit of all of those colors. I'm going to go through and do it again. Also, this is a watercolor art piece, but it's done on cardstock. So if watercolor paper seems a little unattainable for you, and if you say to yourself, you know, I wish that I could just have a lot of paper that I could work with and explore and play and get used to things, cardstock might be a really nice option for you. I'm changing brushes now, making sure that I don't have too much on my brush. I'm going to use a nice, small, flat brush. Nice little angled brush, and I'm going to follow that line all the way down. Okay. It made it a little brighter. That's what it did. Accentuated that color. Now I'm going to be pulling all the way through. Wow. I'm going to make all of my little lines stand out here. Allow for a texture that is quite difficult to accomplish when only using watercolor. If the texture bothers you, that's not something that you particularly like, then feel free to smooth it out. But I love it. I love to have that. Just a nice little extra depth to it, a nice little extra visual interest. Be careful on the tip. It's very hard to get there. And I think that with the very same brush, I'm going to very lightly add just a little bit more of the water, and then I'm going to go in here. I'm going to dab. I see a little bit of that green shining through. I'm okay with it. You'll notice I'm dabbing. I am not using my typical strokes. I'm going to leave a little bit of that texture there. One of the hardest things to do is to know when to stop. And I think that we found a beautiful place to stop here. So, I hope that you enjoyed learning about color layering with watercolor crayons with me today. Thank you so much for joining us with Art on the Farm with Mia, Sage, and Jan, brought to you by the Monroe Area Council for the Arts. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.